The craft beverage modernization provision, introduced by Senator Rob Portman of Ohio, would lower the tax rate on beer produced in the United States, particularly for small breweries. Gregg Vigliot for The New York Times, Washington. The revised Senate tax bill that arrived late Tuesday night brought unexpected gifts for craft breweries, tech startups and certain growers of citrus trees. Companies that house and maintain private aircraft and residents of the Mississippi River Delta who were harmed by flooding on August 11, 2016, also got special treatment. Those were not the headline provisions of the amendment, which also kills the Affordable Care Act's individual mandate and sets expiration dates on all of the individual tax cuts contained in the Senate bill released last week. They were pet issues of special interest groups, championed by some members of the Senate Finance Committee, and the rare example thus far of lobbyists breaking through in their efforts to shape a tax proposal that is hurtling through Congress at warp speed. The House will vote Thursday on a tax bill it released just 2 weeks ago. Senate leaders say they are on track to vote on their version at the end of the month. The speed is a deliberate attempt by top Republicans to deliver a legislative victory before the new year and, along the way, thwart attempts by lobbying groups to change the bills, in ways that could complicate prospects for passage. Thus far, lobbying groups and lawmakers agree the strategy appears to be working, with some notable exceptions. The influential small business lobbying group, the National Federation of Independent Business, has succeeded in reshaping tax breaks for businesses that are not organized as traditional corporations. Large multinationals won a partial rollback of a House attempt to tax some of their payments to foreign affiliates. And the Senate amendment, released on Tuesday by Senator Orrin Hatch, who heads the Finance Committee, included a scattering of carve-outs for interest groups large and small. Among those who stand to benefit are tech companies, whose success pushed for changes to the treatment of stock options, which are heavily used by startups to compensate workers and investors. The Senate amendment introduced on Tuesday removed a provision in the original bill that would have taxed employees' stock options upon vesting, instead of when they're exercised or cashed in. Tech companies including Uber and Airbnb signed a letter arguing the provision was unfair to startups and their workers, since stock options are essentially paper wealth, not real money, and should not be taxed until they are exercised. Not only did the industry successfully lobby for the provision to be removed from both the House and Senate bills, it also won a proactive victory in the Senate bill, which now includes language sought by the industry giving more flexibility for exercising stock options, allowing employees 7 years to pay tax obligations instead of having to pay taxes on the fair market value of the shares at the time they were exercised. "That was a nice addition," said Evan Engstrom, the executive director of a startup advocacy group called Engine, which drafted and circulated the letter signed by Uber, Airbnb and more than 600 tech companies opposing the original stock option language. Mr. Engstrom said he thought the lobbying had an impact. Despite the compressed timeframe for moving the bill, it didn't foreclose the possibility of lobbying altogether, he said. He added, though, it was a bit of a scramble, because we didn't really have a lot of visibility. Smaller trade groups have been particularly strained by the rapid pace lobbyists working on the issue said. Such groups have fewer experts to quickly analyze complex legislative language, fewer lobbyists to try to change provisions that negatively impact their members and smaller budgets for flying in members to plead their cases directly. The speed issues really make it tough to educate and mobilize our membership about the nuance on this when there are a lot of high-profile issues being talked about in the media, said Ian McTiernan, manager of federal relations for the American Institute of Architects, which has told House and Senate Republicans that their bills contain 3 provisions that would disproportionately hurt the 90,000 architects represented by the association, according to a letter it sent to members of the Senate Finance Committee on Tuesday. It singled out provisions rolling back tax credits for rehabilitating historic structures and making energy-efficient improvements to commercial buildings, and the explicit exclusion of architectural firms from tax breaks extended to other small pass-through corporations. Lobbyists for more influential interest groups say that their bandwidth is being stretched by other issues gaining legislative traction at the same time as tax reform. For instance, several of the groups trying to protect a valuable mortgage-related tax break, including the National Association of Realtors and the Mortgage Bankers Association, also have an interest in legislation passed by the House on Tuesday to overhaul a federal flood insurance program. The groups that have had the most success shaping the legislation started long before the bills were unveiled this month. For instance, the Retail Industry Leaders Association had convened a team of tax experts from the giant retail companies in its membership to help kill a proposed tax on imports earlier this year, and it deployed a similar approach to shaping an excise tax provision in the House bill introduced this month. As soon as the association staff members got their hands on the bill, they sent it to the tax experts to assess the potential impacts on their companies, which include Target and Walmart. Some member companies raised specific questions and concerns about the excise tax provision, which called for a 20% tax on payments to foreign affiliates. According to Brian Dodge, an official at the association, all of our companies have these experts, and they were able to go through it pretty quickly to evaluate the good, the bad and the indifferent, Mr. Dodge said. So it wasn't left to staff here to try to guess how our members might be affected. The association's lobbyists relayed those concerns to the House Ways and Means Committee, and also helped connect executives from member companies with key lawmakers. Some of those concerns were assuaged in an amendment passed last week that clarified who would be impacted by the excise tax and also created a credit for foreign taxes paid by affected companies. The compressed timeframe is not the only reason that powerful industry groups have been less able to shape the debate than in 1986, the last time Congress overhauled the tax code. Since then, well-financed ideological advocacy groups have become bigger players in legislative debates, including a raft of conservative groups that have lobbied hard to eliminate many industry-specific carve-outs. Still, some business groups have won changes in the bills. The Senate amendment included apparent victories for the Brewers Association, including a temporary reduction in the excise taxes levied on beer. The craft beverage modernization provision, introduced by Senator Rob Portman of Ohio, would lower the tax rate on beer produced in the United States, particularly for small breweries. The amendment will lower the tax on beer to $16 per barrel on the first 6 million barrels brewed and lower it to $3.50 per barrel for small brewers on the first 60,000 barrels produced domestically. Some citrus growers also gained a tax break for the costs of replanting after disasters. Flooding victims along the Mississippi River Delta may choose to take some early disbursements from their tax-advantaged retirement accounts without penalty. And aircraft management service companies will be exempt from an aviation excise tax they are required to pay under current law.